So trig ratios is not going to be completely new to you, but we are going to add a little bit of new stuff. Now, you are used to sine, cosine, and tangent from geometry. The first thing we have to make sure we understand is trig ratios only work if you have a right triangle. If you don't have a right triangle, it does not work. Okay? Then you need to know where is the angle that you're looking at. I'm going to put the angle right here, and remember this is theta. It stands for the angle. It's just a different variable that we use for angles. And when we look at a triangle, we have three sides. And you're used to calling this the hypotenuse. And so I'll write that down. I'm just going to put an H. I hope that's okay for hypotenuse. Okay, and you're used to calling these other two legs, but these actually have more specific names. So this line right here, the side that is right next to the angle, so we have the angle here and we have the side right next to it, we call that the adjacent side. And you know, the word adjacent actually means next to. So it makes sense. The side next to the angle is called the adjacent side. And the side across from it, so if you're standing here, if you imagine this is a room and you're standing here in the corner and you're looking, and here's the wall across from you, you have a slanted ceiling. Okay, you're standing here and you're looking at the wall. This wall is opposite you, and that's the opposite side. So again, we have the hypotenuse, the longest side, and then the two legs that make the right angle are your adjacent, the one next to the angle, and your opposite, the one across from the angle. Now if I had put my angle up here, this would still be the hypotenuse, but now this would be the adjacent and this would be the opposite if I put the angle there. So now we talk about sine, cosine, and tangent. Now sine, we'd say sine of the angle. Now sine doesn't make sense if you don't have an angle, so make sure you always have an angle there. So sine of the angle equals, and then it's just a fraction. That's all sine is a fraction. And the fraction that we get is the opposite over the hypotenuse. And then we would just write that down, and that would be our answer. Cosine of the angle is adjacent over the hypotenuse, and tangent of the angle is opposite over adjacent. Those are the ones that you're used to from geometry. You may also remember the saying SOHCAHTOA. I believe Mr. Hendrickson teaches that in geometry, SOHCAHTOA. And SOHCAHTOA just stands for sine is the opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, tangent is opposite over adjacent. So that's one way to remember it. Otherwise, I honestly just remember it as is, just memorized it somehow. Okay, now for the new ones that you don't know yet, we have the reciprocals of these. So reciprocal just means flip it over. So maybe you have the hypotenuse over the opposite, and that one is called the cosecant of theta. So let me write that down. Cosecant is how it's written, cosecant. So that would be that one, cosecant of theta. And then for the reciprocal of cosine, we have hypotenuse over adjacent, and that one is the secant of theta. So just imagine a shortened version, secant. And then the reciprocal of tangent, which would be adjacent over opposite, would be cotangent of theta. And so those are your reciprocal functions, or your reciprocal trig ratios. And so you're going to be using those all over the place, but that is the basics of how you find them.